Okay, picture this. You pull up to a gas station, but instead of pumping gas, you're hooking your car up to a charging station that resembles a giant sunflower, soaking up energy from the sun. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right?
Well, maybe not so far-fetched.
Hmm.
You've sent us this intriguing mix of historical articles and current reports about gas stations, specifically in Austria and Germany. And let me tell you, the future of this everyday fixture might be wilder than any sci-fi writer could dream up.
Seriously, I had no idea just how much history is packed into those roadside stops. And speaking of history, our sources take us all the way back to 1924 to the very first gas station in Austria.
Which popped up in Graz, not Vienna, as many might assume.
Yeah.
See, back then, having a car was about as common as owning a pet giraffe, even in a bustling city like Vienna.
So why Graz? What made it the pioneer of Austrian gas stations?
It's all about location, location, location. As historian Dr. Greta Mueller points out in her book, Fueling the Nation, Graz sits on the route to Trieste. Back then, Trieste was a major port city, a gateway to the Adriatic Sea. So even before mass car ownership, goods and people still needed to move through Graz.
So the infrastructure for refueling, even in its early stages, popped up where the traffic was. It's fascinating how these seemingly random spots on the map become significant because of their position on a route.
Exactly. Now, get this first Austrian gas station, it had a 5,000-liter tank, which doesn't sound too shabby, right? Except, according to a local newspaper article from the time, residents actually protested when plans for a 15,000-liter tank were proposed.
Wait, seriously? They were up in arms about a bigger gas tank? That's wild. I mean, today we're complaining about the price per liter. Imagine the uproar if someone suggested tripling the side of a gas station now.
It shows how drastically our perception of cars, and by extension gas stations, has shifted. Back then, they were seen as a potential nuisance, a disruption to the existing order. And this brings us to another fascinating story unearthed from your sources, the story of Bertha Benz. You know, the Carl Benz's wife?
Oh, right. The woman who basically took the world's first road trip. That's 1888, right? Way before our friends in Graz were even thinking about 15,000-liter tanks. But hold on. If there were no gas stations yet, where did she?
That's the best part. According to historical accounts, Bertha Benz made a pit stop at the Stadt Apotheke in Weislach, Germany, a pharmacy. And what did she fuel up with? Ligroin, a petroleum distillate primarily used, get this, as a cleaning fluid.
You're kidding. So the first road trippers were cruising around on the equivalent of glorified cleaning products?
Right.
That's incredible.
Isn't it? And it highlights something crucial about the early days of the automobile. These weren't just car enthusiasts. They were pioneers, innovators who refused to wait for the infrastructure to catch up. They adapted, they improvised, and in doing so, they paved the way for the world we know today. It's a spirit we see reflected even now, wouldn't you say, with the rise of electric vehicles.
It's funny how those early parallels pop up, right? Like trying to find a charging station on a road trip today, it can feel like you're on a treasure hunt. Just like those first drivers searching for a pharmacy that stocked Ligroin.
It really is. And, that whole evolution, we can actually trace it through the changing face of the gas station itself. Our sources detail this really interesting progression, from those makeshift fuel stops to the gas stations we know today. They weren't always these sprawling complexes. Did you know the earliest iterations were literally called tank kiosks?
Tank kiosks. See, that's what I'm talking about. That sounds like almost charmingly retro, like something out of a silent film.
Right. And even before those popped up, picture this. Fuel pumps were often just out on the sidewalk.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Can you imagine that? You're scrolling down the street, you've got the bakery, the butcher shop, and there it is fueling up right next to the hat shop.
Oh.
It wasn't until much later that the gas station as we know it, with the canopy, the dedicated pumps, even the convenience store, really took shape.
It's funny to think about how those early, almost accidental gas stations really paved the way for the ones we see now.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating how they evolved beyond just fuel. Take rural Austria and Germany, for example.
Yeah.
In many areas, gas stations have become these vital social hubs.
That really resonates. I was reading an article in Der Spiegel about how, as other businesses in rural areas disappear, gas stations are stepping in to fill the void. It's not just about filling your tank anymore, It's about grabbing a coffee with a neighbor, maybe picking up a local craft beer, or even attending, get this, a yoga class in a repurposed garage space at the gas station. Who would have thought?
It speaks to their adaptability, their ability to transform with the times, which is more crucial now than ever as we face the well,
Right, the elephant in the room. So, to put it bluntly, are gas stations doomed in the age of electric vehicles?
Well, automotive analyst Jürgen Roth, whose insights are frequently featured in Auto, Motor on Sport,
Mm-hmm.
argues that while the transition is inevitable, it won't be an overnight revolution.
More of an evolution like we've been discussing.
Exactly. And from what I'm seeing, gas stations are proactively embracing this evolution. I mean, take a look around. Many are already incorporating electric vehicle charging stations, diversifying their offerings to cater to a wider range of needs.
Plus, let's be honest, the real estate they occupy, that's not going anywhere. Someone will find a use for it, even if it's not pumping gas. But you know what's interesting? You sent over all this research, and several articles mentioned gas stations in pop culture. I never realized how often they show up.
Oh, it's definitely more common than you might think.
I mean, how many action movies have that classic scene with a shootout at a gas station? And it always seems to culminate in, a spectacular explosion, usually triggered by a stray cigarette.
That's the funny thing, though. Our sources highlight several scientific studies that completely debunk the whole dropped cigarette igniting gasoline trope. Turns out it's surprisingly difficult to ignite gasoline that way in real life.
You're kidding. Talk about a reality check for Hollywood. But it just shows how ingrained the image of the gas station is in our collective consciousness. And it's not just action movies either. I mean, we've got everything from Edward Hopper's rather melancholy painting Gas
To the lighthearted 1930s German musical comedy, Die Drei von der Tankstelle, which, by the way, features a catchy tune about, you guessed it, filling up your car.
It seems like gas stations have been mirroring our ever-evolving relationship with cars and, dare I say, society itself for over a century. They've become more than just places to refuel. They're cultural markers, cinematic shorthand for, well, a lot of things.
Absolutely. They've gone from being symbols of progress and freedom on the open road, as depicted in countless films and songs, to, in some cases, becoming reminders of our environmental concerns, the urgent need for alternative energy sources.
It really makes you think, what will become of the gas station in our lifetime? Will those iconic canopies just become, relics of the past, a nostalgic backdrop in movies about the way things were?
Or will they transform into something new, something essential, but in ways we haven't fully grasped yet? We've talked about their evolution into social hubs, especially in rural areas, but what if that's just the beginning?
Okay, now you've got me hooked. What else could they become?
Well, some urban planners believe gas stations are primed to become, get this, local business incubators, offering affordable, strategically located spaces for startups and small businesses.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, and others envision them as these high-tech rest stops for long-haul electric vehicles, complete with fast charging, comfortable lounges, maybe even like virtual reality entertainment.
From gas station to like a relaxation station, it's a complete reimagining of the space.
Precisely. And there's one more intriguing possibility I came across in my research. Remember how we talked about gas stations becoming social hubs, especially in rural areas?
Yeah.
What if, in our increasingly digital world, they kind of evolve into these havens for genuine human connection?
Now that's a fascinating thought. Instead of, everyone scrolling through their phones while they wait for their car to charge,
Yeah.
we could attending a local art exhibit hosted in a former service bay, participating in a community forum about renewable energy, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe those sci-fi sunflower charging stations won't be so far off either.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that something as seemingly mundane as a gas station could hold the potential for such radical transformation.
It's a good reminder that even in our rapidly changing world, these everyday spaces, they can hold such surprising stories and even more surprising possibilities for the future.
So next time you find yourself at a gas station, whether it's to, actually fuel up your car or just grab a quick coffee, take a moment to consider, what if this is just the beginning of its next evolution? This deep dive has taken us from those first sputtering automobiles to a future that's brimming with possibilities. And I don't know about you, but I'm excited to see where the road leads.
As am I. It's a journey worth taking. One innovation, one adaptation, one cup of gas station coffee at a time.
And on that note, we are out of gas. This has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of the gas station. Until next time, keep your engines running, your minds open, and remember,
There's always more to discover just around the bend.